Again.
Okay. Well, good afternoon all, and welcome to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's Cabinet meeting on the 20th of February 2025. I'm Councillor Liz Burnett and Chair of the meeting as the leader of the Vale of Glamorgan Council and Cabinet Member for Performance and Resources. We're using the Council's hybrid platform today, and we will, as usual, be live streamed and recorded, and the meeting will be uploaded to the Vale of Glamorgan Council's website as soon as practicable after the meeting. Those of us that are in the chamber should ensure that microphones are not activated unless speaking, and remote attendees should mute themselves when not speaking to avoid any background noise or feedback. To speak, if we're in the chamber, either raise your real hand, online your digital hand, and we'll only use the chat function, and that's for the remote participants to raise issues with the democratic service officers. So those are the housekeeping notes for today, so we can move on to the agenda itself. And agenda item 1 is apologies for absence, and we have apologies from Councillor Sandra Perks. I can see that everybody else is either here or online. Thanks. Second item is minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of February 2025, and I would move that we take those as an accurate record.
And I'll second those.
Thank you. Agenda item 3 is to receive declarations of interest and the nature of such interests, if there are any. I'm not aware of any being notified.
No received for this meeting.
And no hands up here, so that's fine. So we've got quite a number. We've got 6 references today, so we can move through those. The first reference, which is agenda item 4, is Audit Wales Financial Sustainability Review of the Vale of Glamorgan Council, July 2024. And this is one of those occasions where you think, oh, wouldn't it have been good if we could have had various reports together, because we've got the reference of this from the 6th of January, but actually on Governance and Audit earlier this week, they discussed the Financial Sustainability Review for the whole of Wales, for all local authorities in Wales, and there were quite a few similarities, as you might imagine. So there was a fair amount of discussion here. I said, whilst they didn't have the context of the All Wales Review at that time, and they recommended that their views be sent back to us for consideration, and those are included under their recommendation too. And they were talking about improvements for the budgeting process, and I know that that's been taken forward for consideration. They wanted more information as to why budgetary decisions were made. I think we're going to have to clarify that a bit more, because quite often we get told that there are too many reports on budget, and that councillors want to be more involved in the process. There was one quite interesting one, which was the final comment, was that the council needs to make bold decisions on what services it can afford, and for there to be a dialogue with the public on council plans and budgets. And I think that's the ambition for all of us, because we know that in the current financial climate, there are things we can do and things that we can't do. And we have to have those conversations frequently. So I think that as we go forward with our new corporate plan, and the way we hope to structure things, that we will see that happening more. So I don't think there's anything to disagree with in those recommendations. So I'd move we note.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. And there aren't any comments, so that's agreed. Agenda item 5, this actually was a really interesting conversation in Governance and Audit Committee on the 6th of January, and it was related to the Corporate Complaints Annual Report. And it was talking all about complaints and compliments, because actually there are a fair number of compliments. And over the year 23 to 24, there actually had been quite a sizable increase in the number of complaints received. But I mean, on discussion, on sort of investigation further, it's actually quite interesting that how complaints are actually recorded, and in some ways, you know, we were talking in the earlier report about us saying that we need to say what we can and can't do. You know, there need to be bold decisions. Sometimes when you make those decisions, people don't like them, but they are decisions. I think the term is are properly made. So they've gone to Cabinet, they've maybe been discussed in scrutiny, they might have gone back to Cabinet and they've been implemented. But some you know, people might not like them. That really should be something that we take on board and we answer, but I don't know whether it's a complaint. You know, certainly talking to people if they want to notify that a bin collection has been missed or something, that is notifying us of an issue, but it's not necessarily a complaint if we rectify that for them. So there are some interesting areas there that need further investigation and need a bit of delving into. I can see that Mark wants to come in on this. So to you, Mark.
Yeah, I'd just like to come in. Obviously, I mean, if people read the actual report that comes to it, on the stage 1 by service area, although there's an awful lot of them in waste management, which is one of the areas I have responsibility for, by stage 2, there's very few that come through, which indicates that a lot of the complaints are fairly easy to resolve, and I think they probably are. So I know that we are looking at providing perhaps an easier way to resolve these issues, plus also people need to be aware, and it's sometimes difficult to do this, of the time spans, because they've got to give the people on the ground time to collect the waste, time to deal with green waste as well. So it's a function of communications and getting it out there before people make these complaints, because really they're not really complaints. A lot of them are queries actually that they are raising with us.
Yeah, I think a lot of us do have contacts from people, particularly say after Christmas or something like that, where there's a high level of waste. So there might be a delay in collections getting there. And quite often it's people need reassurance, or to be told, do you take the waste back in, or are they going to be coming first thing tomorrow morning? And in some ways we need to get better at helping, you know, to inform people on those. But if you said to somebody, do you want to make a complaint? They say, no, we just want our waste picked up. So I actually, reading this report, I think that there is I would really like to have a review of the complaints process so we fully understand what's going on. I know that we're doing some really good work in terms of use of sort of digitisation of the system to provide a better service to people. And so, you know, as I said, I would suggest that we note the recommendation that's relevant to us in the report, but actually, if I could add a recommendation that there should be a review of the complaints process. Well, complaints and compliments process, because it's both, and that should come back to us in due course for a further discussion, and we can reflect that back both to scrutiny, probably corporate performance and resources, and governance and audit as a response to this. So I'm happy to move those.
And I'll second those.
Thank you. Everyone's happy on that. Agenda item 6 is in effect mostly a housekeeping report. It's discussing, it's the reference from governance and audit, and the Audit Wales work programme went to them first, and this was an update, a Q2 update on their work. They reviewed the information in and noted the progress on in the report, and referred it to us for our oversight. It is pretty straightforward. It's an update that finished on 30th of September 2024, and further work has gone on since then. So on this, as I said, I don't see there's anything that stands out. So I would just move we note this.
And I'll second that.
And everybody's happy? That's great. Agenda item 7, this is one for Rhiannon, which is a reference from Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee, and this is related to the Corporate Safeguarding Mid-Year Summary Report from November 2024.
Thank you. Well, it was very pleasing, actually, that there was a thorough discussion at the committee about this. I mean, it was raised about whether or not it was the safeguarding module was going to be compulsory, and it's not, but I'd like to think that all councillors, in fact, would undertake that training. And I think it's so important because we meet so many vulnerable people in the course of our work. So I would encourage any councillor to undertake that. I mean, most of them have actually, and that we are going to make safeguarding training mandatory for all school governors, because this idea that you only appoint one person on a governing body to be responsible for safeguarding, I think is naive and impractical, because you need to have everybody aware of, reporting mechanisms and so forth, actions to be taken in light of children making disclosures and so forth. And, obviously the worst end of it is going to be something like sexual abuse, but there are other things that happen to children that people need to be aware of, that social services or the education department need to be made aware of. So I think that that's very important. I mean, I would encourage anybody that has any kind of contact with vulnerable people to be undertaking this training. So the fact that it's going to be made compulsory, I think is very useful. I feel some governors are possibly going to resist it because they feel that such disclosure will never come their way, but you have no idea. You could be sitting in a bus stop, as has happened to me, and somebody tells you something that sets you back on your heels, and you feel that you have, that they need to get the authorities involved in this. So I was very pleased with the report, and in fact, I will be looking to see if we can make the safeguarding training mandatory for all councillors, because, as I say, you do not know when you'll be put in a situation where you need to have that information, and sometimes you need to have it that minute. It's not enough to say, I'm going to go away and find out about this. You need to be able to reassure or assist that person at that moment. So I'd like us to note it with those comments, please.
Thank you. And Eddie, I was just wondering whether or not, with your safeguarding hat on, you wanted to come in. Over to you, Eddie.
Yeah, fully support what Councillor Birch just said there. It's an important feature of what we as a council are responsible for, and it includes in the report the wide-ranging duties, and there is a safeguarding board, and we're kept up to date with all the concerns that are raised, not only in our own area but in other areas too. And thankfully, we're in a good place. We've got a good system in place, and particularly when you look at the reports for DBS checks and things like that, the authority do really well. So commend the officers for doing that.
Thanks, Eddie. Does that mean that you're happy to second the report?
Thank you, Leader. I do second it.
Thank you both, and everyone's in support. I think one note I will add there is exactly as Rhiannon said, particularly everybody that are involved in our schools, or in fact anybody that's working in public services, we need to be aware of this agenda. And not that long ago, I attended a really superb course from Victim Support, which was talking about how we can be either active allies or active bystanders. So how can you support somebody that may be being harassed or victimised or suffering a detriment of any sort without putting yourself at risk? And there were some really interesting tactics there, and I think maybe that might be something that we want to look at bringing into the council. I know we've had further discussions with the organisation since, and it's even if somebody's trying to intimidate someone else, you can actually just lean forward and block their view. And it's things like that. So really important, but I can understand how some people would be a bit wary of putting themselves in a position that they might perceive as risk. But no, excellent report. And it'd be good to hear in due course, maybe in a future safeguarding report, what the uptake is with governors per se, not just safeguarding governors. That'd be really good. Thank you both. So moving on to agenda, I'll actually take agenda items 8 and 9 together because they are both linked in that they are references in relation to the Project Zero update report. This came from Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee and from their meeting on the 14th of January and from Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee on the 15th of January. I do have to say I find their reports really, really interesting. The committee themselves, in terms of their recommendations that are appropriate to us, from the Environment and Regeneration Scrutiny Committee, they were talking about funding available. They talked about the Project Zero reserve and also about the strategic priorities and resources to be focused in relation to this area going forward. Well, that is very much going to be part of the corporate plan and the service plans going forward. So that will be dealt with. They say that they wanted the report and comments made in relation to recommendation 4, which we've done, referred to Cabinet to be considered alongside the Corporate Performance and Resources Scrutiny Committee, which we're doing. But they also mentioned that they recommend the report be distributed to all elected members, members of the Public Service Board and all town and community councils for their information. I'm not sure if they would have done this because actually this is within the control of the Scrutiny Committee themselves, and I would imagine that they would forward a link. But I think we need to clarify that all elected members would have been sent an email with this report on the agenda, I believe. So they would have already had it. And then we can check whether or not the committee clerks for that scrutiny committee have already actioned that. If not, we can do it, but perhaps we can say that there are all sorts of powers that scrutiny committees have in terms of their own actions. And so they could take that forward in future. In terms of the reference from Corporate Performance and Resources, I said it was fairly similar conversations in terms of procurement and the part that can play in terms of Project Zero. They talked again about the meeting where the Wales Centre for Public Policy had participated in conversations about the carbon management plan. And they were also talking about Welsh Government methodology. So the committee can, if they need to, can ask for clarification on that. They're able to do it. So there's only one real, their recommendation 7 talks about their comments being referred to Cabinet. They have said that any future carbon management plan and Project Zero reports be presented to the committee alongside each other, and a discussion takes place in the future with committee members as to how to present progress against targets. I would suggest that actually that is for the committee to, because committees are in charge of their own forward work programme. So committees can structure their programme for that, and it is not something that we would impose on them as a Cabinet. So we can reflect that back to the committee clerks that support the work plan. They're talking about they want clarity to be provided going forward on how the council was or is not succeeded in relation to the RAG status, and that RAG status information be provided to members in relation to flood management plans and surface water issues. There is no reason why they shouldn't have that, but again, I would suggest that it's for the committee to request that, as they are in many ways autonomous of Cabinet if they are searching it for information, etc. So I think that we will note those reports, but actually clarify it's not the remit, but it's the ability of the committee to be self-directing in many of these ways. So are we happy that we on the whole note these and make the comments or pass on comments to the committee clerk for those committees? Is that okay?
Yep, and I'll second that.
Excellent. Agenda item 10 is a standard report. This is the use of the Chief Executive's emergency powers. And these are the ones that we often do where there are grants to be accepted or work to be moved on following an earlier cabinet decision or whatever. They're listed out in the report, which are sort of clear for anyone to see. So I would just move that we note the use of the Chief Exec's emergency powers.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. Everybody's okay? Oh, Eddie, you've got your hand up.
Sorry about that, Leader. I was a bit slow there. Yeah, it's often when I see this report, I think, oh, emergency. What's the emergency about this? But clearly, when you look at reports, it's the timescales that we need to be able to utilise the funding and the grants that are available. And when you look at some of the aspects in there, there's a couple in there, particularly with the social services area, that I'm really pleased about moving forward. And hopefully they'll come to fruition, which will change the provision that we do for daycare and things like that. And that's just one of them. There are others, and it's one of those. We almost roll through it, don't we, as if to say, right, that's happening. But behind the scenes, there's so much work going on that are just and the legal teams are involved with it, as all the directors are. So just want to raise that particular point. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Eddie. You raise a very valid point there, and it was interesting because, at the moment a lot of people are saying to me, "What's happening to the car parking report?" And it's a difficult one because things take such a long time to get through the system, quite often, particularly if you want to do it properly. And so, with that, say for example, it went to scrutiny committee. The minutes of that meeting, which was quite a sizable meeting, have to be drawn up, they have to be signed off, there has to be a reference written to come back to Cabinet. The Cabinet process works in a minimum of 2 weeks because papers are lodged 2 weeks before a Cabinet and have to be approved by relevant departments, whether that be legal or financial, etc. And so until all that's done, it can't come back. When there are things like executive powers where, as I said, we need to accept a contract within a certain period of time, otherwise the prices might go up. We might need to get people on site to do work that we've already agreed. Then we would use these powers, we would use the emergency powers in order to move things forward, and that's a process. But it's good that they're reported to Cabinet because then it's completely open and clear exactly what's happening, and people are quite able to ask for further details as members often do about things that have been signed off. It's all there in the background. So thank you for that. And I've moved and Bronwyn's noted. So That's agreed. Thank you. Another piece of housekeeping from me is the calendar or the timetable of meetings from May to this year to May next year. One word of caution is in light of the new corporate plan, we're actually seeing whether or not we need to tweak scrutiny committees to best meet the needs of delivering the new corporate plan. So we also put this out in draft form so that we can spot any clashes, because obviously there are town councils, community councils, etc., that are all doing things, and we need, sometimes there are clashes, but other times, if possible, we try and avoid them. So this is the draft for next year. For agreement, but as I said, there's likely to be little tweaks. So the recommendation that we've got, fairly straightforward, is that the timetable of meetings for May 2025-26, as set out in Appendix A to report, be approved, subject to any future changes and arrangements for meetings deemed appropriate by the Mayor of the Council or the relevant committee or meeting chair. And I would move. It also means that members can have a holiday. They can book a holiday now because they'll know when they haven't got to go to meetings. So, yes, I'm happy to move.
And I'll second that.
Thank you. And the rest of the Cabinet saying, what's a holiday? Yes, I know the feeling only too well. But thank you all. So that's the end of my reports, you'll be pleased to know. And agenda item 12, we will move over to Cabinet Member Education, Arts and Welsh Language for the annual report for SACRA 23-24. So that's over to you, Rhiannon.
Thank you. Well, I'm just going to introduce this because actually it's Eddie's baby, as he's chair of this standing committee. So I will tell you what the recommendations are, and then I'm going to hand it over to Eddie to fill in the gaps. That we approve the attached annual report for SACRA, the Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education and the Standing Advisory Council, and that Cabinet refers this report and the appendices to the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee for consideration, with any recommendations referred back to Cabinet for consideration. And if committee makes no recommendations, the matter would be considered as agreed. So those are the recommendations. I'm going to hand over to Eddie at this point.
Thank you, Rhiannon. The report itself, it's part of legislation that we've got to have a report, but when you look at the report, it gives quite a lot of detail on why the SACRA meet and what the function is. And within the report, it talks about some of the particular good aspects. For example, the Eston reports on the schools where it's been identified, where there's been good delivery. So that's a good indication that the schools are embracing, particularly as we know that the curriculum for Wales has changed the curriculum in the last few years into the humanities subject. And the major changes for me are that this particular aspect is less of a dogma and a direction, this is what you're supposed to believe, but allow youngsters from an early age, in primary school even, to come up with their own views. And you can see from the construct of the SACRA, the breadth of denominations and people with non-religious beliefs as well. So it's a really balanced group. I'm pleased that the teachers are involved, and I would like to give a particular thanks to Donna Graves, who's the Central South Consortium Joint Education Service. She's the advisor to the group, and she does our SACRA, but she also does 4 others, Bridgenda and many others. And the information and the expertise that she brings is exceptional. As you can see from the report, the resources that are included, I would recommend them to anybody to have a look. And it certainly widens our worldview, and also, there's no doubt that it's been a massive improvement on previous years. I'd also like to thank the clerk, Fran Wright, because of her work in getting this report and other stuff with the administration. So I commend it to the to people to read, not only for the scrutiny, and I look forward to hearing some of their views on it. I know that Donna's presented in the scrutiny for learning culture already throughout the year, but I look forward to this report being discussed. Thank you. So I'll move Councillor Birch's recommendation. Second that, I meant. Yeah.
Thanks, Eddie. So on the basis that Rhiannon's moved that and Eddie seconded it, the rest of us are in agreement. And we'd also pass on our thanks to officers involved. That's excellent. So our final report for today is the Annual Equalities Monitoring Report, and that's over to the Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services. Over to you, Ruba.
Thank you, Chair. This report will be familiar to everybody. It's the as you've stated, Liz, it's the annual monitoring report for our equality objectives, how we are doing against our strategic equality plan for 2020-24. This monitoring report is looking at the year from 2023 to 2024. And it's really important that we recognise that why a report like this is important, but also to remind ourselves why I'm bringing this report is because it's looking at the actions that we as a local authority are taking to improve equality for all the people living and working in the Vale of Glamorgan, and I'm really proud of some of the achievements that we continue to make, and looking forward that we will continue to make in the future. So the report, the full report, is at Appendix A, and it summarises what services have done to collect and analyse equality data and how people with protected characteristics have used the services and how we are meeting those needs. But not only that, because as you will know, Leader, we have a socio-economic duty as well. So we have to look at, people, living, below the poverty line, people who are struggling to make ends meet. We need to make sure that our services are also reaching those communities. So it comments on the progress made with each of the equality objectives in our own strategic equality plan. And obviously it's something that we have to do by law according to the Equality Act. So if I can just take this opportunity, Leader, just to highlight some of the work that we have been doing. So, for example, we have been the team based in Learning and Skills, which there's a team based in Learning and Skills, which is called the Communities for Work, and it looks at and targets support for particular groups shown to be experiencing high levels of unemployment. So they launched the Quick Start team scheme, which gives young people between the ages of 18 to 25 a 6-month paid work placement. And then there's Strive, which also comes under this team, which is a pre-16 school-based project to help develop motivation and personal skills. So, it's really looking at removing engagement barriers. And so this team has developed support for employment, and it's specifically aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds with disabilities and neurodiverse conditions. So, that's a very ambitious approach and objective, and and we're meeting those targets and looking to engage those particular groups. Then there's our developing an inclusive workplace. So we've created a disability network. You'll already know that we have a diverse network, and the LGBTQ network. So we want to make sure that all our staff are engaged with what within the work and with the work that they're doing in our council. And if I can just be indulged, just for one more highlight, which is Her Voice Wales. Now, Her Voice Wales is a group of girls who are aged between, I think, 13 and 17 from the Vale of Glamorgan, who started the We Don't Feel Safe campaign to raise awareness about catcalling and sexual harassment on the street, on transport, and so on. And they have worked with the Vale Youth Service, working with the Vale Youth Service, conducted research and presented to council, you'll remember, Leader, and to cabinet members, representatives from the police and Senate members. They presented their findings, and they continue to work with the community safety team and with the council, to provide that support to women and girls. So, these are just some examples of the kind of work that we are doing. So if I move then to our recommendations, sorry, if you just give me 1 second. So I've got 2 recommendations. Firstly, that Cabinet approves this monitoring report, the annual equality monitoring report for 2023 and 24, which, as I've stated, can be found in Appendix A. And also the other appendices that are contained in this report really highlight the methods that we've used to glean some of this data within our services. And then the second recommendation, final recommendation, is that that Cabinet refers this report to Learning and Culture, the Learning and Culture Scrutiny Committee, and that any recommendations be referred back to Cabinet for consideration and inclusion in the final version of the annual equality monitoring report. So I would move those recommendations.
Thanks, Ruba. Before I was going to make a comment, but before I do, I'll hand over to Eddie.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Ruba, for this report. You're quite correct. There's so many good examples of the authority, how we're working to improve the equalities, diversity. And one of the aspects that I've particularly noted within the report is the anti-racism agenda that we've got, and particularly within the schools. But I'm recognising that its impact on not just young people, but on adults as well and the community. We put it on as one of our main objectives within the Social Services Directorate. There's quite a lot of change that needs to happen. And as a white male, I didn't realise how privileged I am until I had one of these briefings. And it's really humbling to know that there's change that needs to happen. And I was quite surprised. I just thought everybody had the same chances, but clearly they're not. And if we as an authority can, as we're doing with this monitoring report, recognise where we need to go, then I'd fully support that. So, second your report. Thank you.
Well, yes, it's coming up. Thank you both. Really constructive comments there. I echo your thoughts, Ruba, on the Her Voice Wales group. I actually went on one evening wandering around Barry with them and looking at areas where they felt that young people, both male and female, felt uncomfortable out and about. Some really interesting work. We do this from a statutory perspective, and we measure the sort of main equality streams. But I think what I would like to say is, as far as we're concerned, as a council, whoever you are, whatever challenges you face, it might not come under one of these equality streams. You are important and you are valued by this council. And pleased to hear Eddie admit his privilege, but I'm sure there are other things that we can find that put you into various equality streams. So thank you for that. Thank you all. And I see that everybody is nodding in agreement. So that is agreed. Thank you. So that we don't have any urgent items today, you'll be pleased to know, and neither do we have any part 2 items. So just remains for me to thank everyone for your attendance and see you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.